Greetings, BArcadians, and welcome to another edition of the BA Gaming News Show. The gaming news show that's so obscure and lesser known that if we were loot, would be legendary. Every Friday at 5 PM, don't forget and ring that bell for notifications, tell your friends about us. And of course, you've got your hosts every week, me, Tabs, and my good friend and gaming extraordinaire, Richard. Say hello, Rich.
I'll take that. Hello, everybody.
We're trying to come up with new ones every week. It's I'm already failing at it. But before we get into the fairly juicy topics this week, there's plenty to talk about with Cyberpunk and the Game Awards, which we'll come to. But before we do, as we always check in with each other each week, Rich, and let the BArcadians know, what have we mostly been playing? Kick us off.
So, I mentioned last week on the news we were going to have a go on Hollow Knight at the weekend, which we did. Tabs joined me to watch me play some of that, and yeah, I really enjoyed playing it. I sort of got hooked in it. Played it, I think, pretty much every night since. Really enjoying it. It is a difficult game. Anyone that's not played it, I'm sure people that have played it will know that. But I actually quite like that it's quite difficult. It sort of forces you to evaluate the way in which you play games in a way that lots of games don't, because it's not always about the same playing style. You can't just push the way through it. You've got to learn things and be more methodical, and yeah, it's a different gaming experience, and one I'm really enjoying. I'm really enjoying the grind of it. So
I'm taking credit as well, Rich, because I'm able to provide moral support via the PS5 screen share, aren't I?
Absolutely, yeah, and hints and tips and tricks, obviously. So I'm really enjoying that. I mean, I did finish last night, had a nightmare for the last 20 minutes, and was just like, and then turned it off.
I mean, I've got a bone to pick with you, mate, because you said to me the other day, I said, what are you thinking then, mate? What would you give it out of 10? And you were like, 7, 8. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. But literally this week, I've had quite a few WhatsApp messages from the blue from you, literally saying, oh, right, game plan tonight then, what shall I do? Where are we going next? Shall I think on this boss? And I'm telling you now, the only time you're like that with games is when you really love them. Breath of the Wild.
Now, the one thing I will say to that, Tad, is you asked me fairly early doors this week, and I feel like in the last so I think I'm 6 or 7 hours in, and I feel like it's the last 2 and 3 hours where it's really started to feel the way I've approached it differently, and I've started to sort of understand it more. It's moved into a much higher bracket. I think it's a strong 9 for me, easy. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, it's very addictive, isn't it? And yeah, you've just unlocked a new ability, which. Yeah, it's really picking up pace.
But anyway, what about you, Tabs? What have you been playing this week?
Well, just that with you, really, I suppose. However, no, I have also picking up on last week's Shadow of War. Trying that out. Our friend of the channel, Andy, had advised that it was a really good game. I was a little bit not as impressed last week, if you did watch last week's news show. And I have to say, I think I'm about 10 hours in, maybe a little bit over. And it is, I'm getting there with it, definitely. There is an addictive loop to the gameplay. It's got all that Lord of the Rings kind of mythology and lore around it, which is lovely. And, it is something that had Cyberpunk not come along, I would continue playing because I'm enjoying it now. The game's blossomed a little bit insofar as you start to build your army, essentially, for those of you who know what that means in the game. But yeah, I think I'm sitting at around a 7, 8 out of 10 for it. I feel like the grind will become particularly grindy as I keep pushing into it, because with each new area, the objectives you get are essentially the same in a slightly new area, and you're really doing the same things over and over again. But there are bigger mechanics around that are blossoming and give it more depth. So yeah, I would say I wasn't that hooked on it last week. This week though, 7 or 8 out of 10, and who knows where that could go. However,
unfortunately, it's destined to get cobwebs and dust at the back of the closet because
Cyberpunk 2077 dropped. Yeah, so I didn't stay up last night. I was too tired in the end, but I have been playing it here and there today. Past the character creation screen tutorial, on my first real mission, which you'll see from the trailers, is the Dexter Deshawn one. Cool. And yeah, I mean, so far so good. It's perhaps not blowing my mind in the way that at one point I really hoped it would. That's both graphically and in the experience itself.
Okay.
But it's not disappointing. It's steeped in this brilliant, futuristic atmosphere, and it is very immersive, and the RPG elements seem super deep. So, but we'll come back to that.
Very briefly before we move on, what have you got all the graphics? Because you bought this on the PC, haven't you? So you're playing on the Alien. What have you got your graphics set at? You got ray tracing on?
RTX 2080. Yes, I have. I'm still experimenting. I started at 4K with DLSS. It seems if you want ray tracing on, you need to employ DLSS to have anywhere near decent performance. I've dropped it down to 1440p. I've actually just dropped it down to 1080p. And I'm just tweaking because I really want the smoothness. As I've got into the cityscape, it felt like the performance was starting to tank a little bit. So I really want to keep that smooth 60 frames per second on the OLED. So I've dropped it at 1080p and I'm just tweaking. You can also crank up the DLSS to either auto all the way up to high performance. But I've noticed that the DLSS, it actually causes some sort of like almost artifacting phenomena over some of the graphical features in the game, which is a little bit distracting. So it's a balancing act. I'm going to stay tuned to Digital Foundry because no doubt I'm hoping Alex Batali is going to tell us sometime soon what his recommended settings are.
I have to say that's crazy that you're running 8 gig? Is it an 8 gig or a 4 gig? 2080? Is it 8? It's 8.
I don't know. It's slightly watered down because it's in the Alienware.
It's a 6 gig. We've got 6 gig, haven't we? I can't think what we've got.
Sounds about right, but it is slightly watered down because it's in a laptop form.
But still, it's crazy that it's still, you can't even get maximum performance from that. So it's crazy. But anyway, we best move on because we've been rabbiting on for ages.
Right, so first story we've got this week, Halo Infinite Resurgence. So this came from courtesy of Eurogamer. I'm just going to read through some kind of select quotations from their article, then we can discuss after it. But it's really all about Joseph Staten and a blog post that brings us up to date with Halo Infinite's difficult development journey. So, 343's hotly anticipated Xbox Series X, S, Xbox One and PC first-person shooter was originally due out as an Xbox Series X and S launch title in November 2020, but was delayed to 2021 after the studio faced a number of development challenges, including those related to the coronavirus. So Joseph Staten has said he's played the entire Infinite campaign twice. I was, in a word, stunned, and in the best possible way, by what the team had done. Infinite is by far the most expansive and vertical Halo world ever. Why did the team do this? Because they understand that wonder and freedom are key to the Halo experience. All sounds very good so far. I mean, he's going to say good stuff about it because he's in charge of the game. I could feel the classic Halo 30 seconds of fun beating at the heart of Infinite's world, but I'd never felt more powerful, more mobile, more in command of a rich set of tactical choices. This was the Halo we imagined back in 2000, finally come to life after 20 years of technical and creative innovation. Developer 343 said it has worked to improve Halo Infinite's visuals after its disastrous campaign demo revealed in July and published new screenshots. And then Neil Harrison of 343 on Craig, he had a few words to say. Poor old Craig was never intended to be seen in that condition, which is not something that was evident during the gameplay. It was only later, in the close-up freeze frame of his one bad moment, where it came to light and the legend of Craig was born. However, Harrison added that more variety has been added for brute faces, and the developers are working to add some hairdos and beards. So whilst we have come to love our dear old Craig, he said, he's certainly undergoing a significant makeover. So I know I sent you this blog post, didn't I, Rich? You had a bit of a read through, and I think you felt there was some noise and some smoke being kicked up. But broadly positive it reads, doesn't it? At the very least.
I think, unfortunately, at this time they've got to redevelop the brand almost. It was so damaged by what they showed in the fallout from that, and everything we've heard about 343 since. They need to do a bit of a patch-up job with the brand of Halo, and I think part and parcel of this it's quite frank and honest post, although in my personal, a lot of noise and a lot of waffle that meant little in the grand scheme of things. It was a way of like bringing us back to try and get us back in the world, get us re-engaged with it, and that it is a passionate project, that everyone's passionate about it, and it isn't this mess that everyone thinks it is. And I think that's where this comes from, and I think that we're going to see that over the months to try and sort of generate some more positive things towards the game to basically increase stock so that people can go out and buy it.
Yeah, I'd say that's bang on, mate. Opening the dialogue almost with the fans again, giving some transparency, although I don't doubt there's some kind of marketing spin here to make it sound, super awesome. Hopefully it will be, but obviously this car crash demo in July, well, it's basically been a year off, hasn't it? There was a year delay to it. It says fall 2021 here. So that tells you how much work is there to do. But if he's played through it, he says it's a great experience. Seemingly the bones are there. It's more about, bringing the engine up to spec in terms of graphical fidelity and, polishing. So, they've got a good stint now to get that done. And here's hoping that, it's all worthwhile and we do see something as amazing as he makes it sound there earlier on in that piece. But BArcadians, as always, let us know what you think in the comments. Epic Hedgehog, feel free to kick us off, as you always do. Thank you very much. But Rich, do you want to take us on to subject number 2?
Absolutely. You may have heard Tabs has got Cyberpunk now. He started playing it earlier on. I think he spent 7 hours creating his character. But now we're into the review roundup. So, Metacritic, it currently sits at a 91. So let's just go through what some of the people gave it. So, VG247 gave it 100. Games Radar Plus gave it 100. IGN gave it a 90. Game Informer a 90. Eurogamer another 90. Metro gave it an 80. Super Rant an 80. And Gamespot a 70. More on that shortly.
And yeah, so what we'll do, I've taken 3 reviews, just kind of little blurbs to read out. So I'll kick us off, Rich. Video Game 24/7. In the midst of such intense anticipation and scrutiny, it's easy to get carried away with what Cyberpunk 2077 could have been. The final experience might be more familiar than many predicted, with plenty of elements that aren't perfect, but it's dripping with detail and engaging stories. With so much to see and do, Cyberpunk 2077 is the kind of RPG where you blink and hours go by, which is just what we need to finish off 2020. And as a reminder, they give it, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100. So, positive. Rich, nice. Take us on.
Game Informer had this to say: Cyberpunk 2077 is dark and disturbing at times, frighteningly so, but the majority of its content is fascinating and loaded with depth through the various RPG systems and lore. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Night City, and Johnny Silverhand is a great partner to see the sights with. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't overstay its welcome with its critical path story and invites players to jack in and stay for hundreds of hours of unique content should they want to. It didn't blow me away like The Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt, but it's still a hell of an opening to what will hopefully be a new series. Interesting.
Yeah, and they gave it a 90 as well, so again, positive. And then, just to kind of show us the full spectrum here, the Gamespot review. So we've got the blurb. Your mileage may vary, but in our experience, the bugs are obtrusive and substantial across the board, often forcing us to reload saves or exit the game entirely. It's hard to get really into a world where you constantly have to leave. But then it's hard to get into Cyberpunk 2077's world in general. So much of it is superficial set dressing, and there's so much happening all around you. Ads going off at all times, gunfights breaking out in the streets, text coming in about cars you'll never buy, that a lot of the game feels superfluous. The side quests and the characters they showcase are the shining beacon through the neon-soaked bleakness of Night City, and they give you room to explore the best core RPG elements have to offer. These are what carried me through an otherwise disappointing experience. So before, Rich, I just throw over to you, I just wanted to point out, and we'll talk more broadly about Cyberpunk and the reception, but this particular GameSpot review has garnered a bit of attention on social media platforms. We didn't want to dwell too much on this because ultimately it's actually led to the reviewer being targeted on social media, for abuse essentially, and trying to strip her down and make her sound like she's not doing a job. And I don't think that's positive at all. then it's something that shames us all, really. So we didn't want to spend too much time. The only comparison Rich and I really talked about in the week is we read the review, and we made a comparison with, you remember, Rich, the original Death Stranding review that I published, and that was a little bit of an outlier as well. And I think the only thing I would comment is that the reviews do read similarly insofar as the reviewers don't appear to have been perhaps open-minded with the game, with the content. They almost, it feels like they've closed their mind either very early or they went into it closed-minded. And in fact, this particular reviewer, they did provide some context. There's a YouTube video out there, and she does actually kind of mention that she didn't really engage with all of the content in the game. And while that is a perfectly valid perspective, if you aren't engaged by it, you don't want to do it, I think there's a question to be said about the value of a review if it's not, actually accounting for the broad spectrum of content available in a game. And I know from, reading SkillUp's or watching SkillUp's review recently, or earlier today actually, he mentions that in fact the side quests actually contain the kind of lifeblood of the game and the experience, while the main line has its spectacle. Really, to get the richness from the experience, you need to be engaging with a lot of the side quests. So yeah, draw your own conclusions there. But Rich, do you want to just share more broadly your perspective and also talk us through some of these bugs that we're hearing about, because it is concerning?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the bugs, it's quite clear that they're at the end, with so many delays on this, they've had to just go, it's going out, whether it's finished or not. And it's quite clear from what we're reading, especially on the old generations of PS4s and Xbox Ones, it does have some flaws, some real flaws, so some graphical flaws. And I think Tabs mentioned it may well be linked to the fact that it can't access the information it needs fast enough that the engine requires because it doesn't have an SSD. It seems better on next gen, so PS5, Xbox Series X, Series S, but again, there are still some bugs there. And certainly from what we've been reading, and this is one of the additional reasons why Tabs has chosen to go down the PC route, is if you want the best possible bugless, or as bugless as possible, at this stage, it's best to go for the PC version. Which is a real shame, but I think that's just a circumstance of the fact they had to get this game out with so many delays. They just didn't have time to fix all the bugs, which is a real shame. But I suspect, in the next few weeks, we'll see it all ironed out and be performing at least at, well, maybe not perfectly. And then, yeah, it does seem like a bit of an interesting game. It seems like it's a lot shorter than lots of people said. We thought it was going to be more like The Witcher, so 40, 50 hours. It sounds like it's more like 20 hours for the core game, the game story, which is a little bit of a shame. I expected it to be a little bit longer, I think. But certainly, from what we're reading, it's generally positive things about it, apart from, as Tabs has said, the outlying ones where maybe they haven't experienced the game quite like they should, or it's been reviewed by someone who is not interested in RPGs, which makes no sense.
Yeah, this is it. And that's more an error, you would say, perhaps of the publication who printed it. She's obviously been selected, this reviewer. If she doesn't like RPGs, is there some responsibility there for her to say, maybe this isn't the right game for me to review? And then also on the other side of that, should the publication be saying, based on the review, is this really representative of an objective review of the whole game and the whole experience? But again, let us know your thoughts, BArcadians. The only thing, just to bolt onto that, Rich, I think it's worth pointing out that on, as you mentioned, the current gen, it's a bit of a bug's life in terms of the experience. The way CD Projekt Red have gone about it has not been... Brian Artano, for example, said on Twitter today that because they kind of banned... They didn't give any of the console games out to reviewers pre-release, so they've not been able to publicise how buggy these experiences are, how bad it is. We've only seen this from leaks where the games have got out in the wild early. So essentially, all these people who have put in pre-orders on a game expecting a fairly decent experience didn't actually realise that day one it's pretty bug-ridden. Game breaking, I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but certainly there's some significant bugs. Touch with me on the PC, the only thing I've had is a busker in the street was playing guitar. Now, I don't know if this was a bug or not, but I couldn't see a guitar. I could hear it, But then again, maybe in this cyber world, it was just supposed to be like that.
The trouble is with a game that's supposed to be like super immersive and immersing you in this world, when you have graphical issues, so I've seen stuff where you've not got textures are missing, graphics, look blocky, that's taking you out of the immersion that you want from a game like this. So does that then create a game-breaking scenario because it doesn't allow you to immerse yourself in the way that you want to? I don't know. That's for people who are playing the game to decide whether that is detrimental to their experience, but I don't know.
Agreed, and a good way, if you are patient enough or you've got other games in your queue, perhaps just wait till next year when we get the next-gen patches for consoles, and then that might be the better way to play it rather than kind of tainting the experience now with, in its current condition. But Rich, enough banging on that subject. Take us to topic number 3. Finish us off.
So, Nintendo Life. So this is all about the Game Awards, and it's now become tradition of the Game Awards. It's now become tradition. The Game Awards 2020 will have lots to look forward to, not just the awards themselves. Jeff Keighley teased plenty of world premiere announcements. I think that was via Twitter, wasn't it, Tabs?
Yeah, exciting. Very exciting.
Very exciting. The event's producer has confirmed that the show, taking place online on Thursday the 10th of December at 4 p.m. PT. Which
midnight tonight, mate.
Yeah, something like that, which is a shame because we were hoping to cover some of the stuff on the news this week, but unfortunately we're filming this before it airs. We'll feature 12 to 15 game announcements. Wowzers! With all reveals being for games that have not yet been announced in any way, shape or form. Wow, this is incredible! While she stops short of giving anything away, Keighley says that we should expect a mix of AAAs and smaller titles. Wow. I mean, I was thinking early night tonight, now I'm thinking stay up all night.
I know, the thing is, how long's the Game Awards and when are these announced? I think you'd be close to 2 a.m. by the time you get your
Probably, undoubtedly, I'd have thought.
I'm just going to check the news in the morning, I think, for me, mate. But personally, I would love to see, this would be, this ain't going to happen, but MGS remake announced, Silent Hills, headed by Kojima Productions, announced, Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, and launch date for next year. That's plenty. That's me golden. But what about you, mate? Anything you'd like to see?
Well, the first two you've said there, Silent Hill with Kojima in some way, the MGS remake, yes, please. I don't think we're going to see anything Breath of the Wild related, just because this says these are going to be new game announcements, and we already know Breath of the Wild 2 was announced like last year or whenever it was it E3 last year? I don't know whether we'll see anything more of that. I hope so, because I'm really... Sorry?
God of War, possible?
See, now, a trailer of God of War would go down a treat, let me tell you. Yeah, I'm hopeful. We'll have to see.
But, my friend, let's move on to everything else. We've overstayed our welcome, as usual. Kick us off with the first.
Cyberpunk 2077 surpasses Fallout 4 to become Steam's biggest-selling single-player game. Wow.
Take-Two CEO predicts photorealistic graphics will be common in 10 years, which is...
Wow.
I'm sure they said that 10 years ago, though, as
well. Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake has been delayed till March.
I think it needed it.
Yeah.
It was a bit rough, that initial trailer.
Massively agreed.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla has a hidden League of Legends Easter egg.
Interesting. Disco...
Such as life. You might be able to tell us about it in the comments. Let us know.
Absolutely. Disco Elysium teasing something on their website. Then something is coming soon, so it'd be interesting to see what that is.
Yeah, there's been I think they're working on console ports. We know that much. So is it just that, or could it be something bigger, like an expansion, DLC, or even a sequel?
Are we going to see something at the Game Awards for that?
Fingers crossed, because I love Disco Elysium. And then we've got Smash Brothers character reveal incoming. Nintendo have revealed on a tweet, Game Awards, I think, is going to be the venue for announcing another Smash Brothers character. So that should be interesting. Is that going to be paired with an announcement? Who knows?
And just taking us back to the Game Awards, because I'm sure it will be a good night for Naughty Dog, Neil Druckmann has been promoted to the co-president of Naughty Dog, which is really cool.
Yeah, fingers crossed that Last of Us 2 does bag a few awards.
Absolutely.
It'd be nice to see them do well. But I think that brings us to a close, BArcadians. thank you very much for watching. Please smash that like button if you haven't already, and make sure you tune in next week, Friday at 5 p.m, for the next episode. As always, please let us know your thoughts on all the topics we've discussed today in the comments. Keep it nice, keep it friendly. And yeah, I think that's probably us for today, Rich. Another one for the archives.
Absolutely. Stamped and completed.